Welcome to Juggling Lessons. I I'm happy to be here with my friend Hersch Knapp, and we're going to talk about medical hesitancy. And this is part one of a series that I plan to really dominate the rest of the calendar year with. Medical hesitancy recently, well, I've had a heck of a time dealing with doctors for a long time, and I got an infection this year. And I was so late about getting to the doctors that I really put myself under quite a bit more risk than I should have. So now that I'm out of the hospital and, still taking meds, I'm very, very enthusiastic about talking about medical hesitancy with people. I think vaccine hesitancy is a subcomponent of medical hesitancy. So we will talk about that a little bit. And mostly I want to talk about the fears and reasons why we want medical and why we don't, and how that balances out. Hersch?
Yes. What in particular, where would you like me to begin?
Well, I guess the first thing is I'd like to understand how embracing you are of medicine. On the scale of me a year ago, where I would be willing to go see them if I broke a bone or were in a car accident, but pretty much less than that. No, not even for a checkup. They want to poke me with needles and it's horrible. To, wow, I want any elective surgery I can get and I trust them completely. And doctors are the best possible thing. And I don't mind ever going to the doctor. Maybe I'm straw manning the other side.
Well, just to give a little bit of background, so I'm not coming from out of the blue. I was raised by parents who believed in science and regular dental and regular medical checkups and take your temperature. And if aspirin's not doing it, we're going to the pediatrician. So I was pretty much socialized to that. And just to be clear to the people listening, is I hold a PhD in behavioral science, and I've worked in hospital doing emergency trauma psych in ER, ICU, CCU, med surge, code blue team. So that's my orientation. That's my professional orientation. And I also teach at university, research methodology, statistics. So I'm up to hearing it. I believe in good science and good health, and that's the access point to keeping yourself healthy. And not to deny that a lot of and I tell ER patients this all the time who are non-compliant with their care, that the number one predictor of the next time I'm going to see you, or the time between now and your next hospitalization, the biggest predictor is what you do with yourself in between hospitalizations, the self-care that you provide.
Somebody said more light on her.
Oh, okay.
We're going to do that.
Hello.
Thank you, background production people. So I want to ask this of everybody. Are you vaccinated?
I am.
Cool.
Yes. As soon as I got notification that I was eligible, I went back in, I believe, March, and very relieved to get some protection against this very devastating pandemic.
Yeah. I've really seen for myself. I'm vaccinated. Again, as soon as I was eligible, about a month after you, because I'm not in healthcare. I just had to wait till like over 50 people were up with no other conditions. I've from the beginning seen a vaccine as the likely way out of this pandemic, the thing that was going to fix the problem, the thing that was going to allow us to release again. And now I see that we have a pandemic amongst the subpart of the population that aren't vaccinated, which is, I think, where I am about 40%.
Well, if it's one thing enabling people to, of course, make healthcare decisions for themselves. And I think one of the biggest challenges in healthcare that is kind of not what anyone's expecting to have to cope with is that people own their own lives and patient self-determination, and we can make good recommendations for people. But I've had people discharged from the hospital with serious conditions that going home is not the solution, and they'll quote religion. Well, God will take care of me, Jesus will take care of me, whatever the decision is. And as a ethical provider, it's my goal to have people best informed and to convey that. And but ultimately the decision that they make is theirs, and it's very hard to see when somebody opts to ignore the science and make a different decision.
Yeah.
It's very hard to see that. And it takes a lot of getting used to. And some of these are very dear people. And some of these are people that you're just meeting for minutes and briefing them and trying to help them understand what's the nature of their condition and what our intentions are for their care. Some of them leave anyway. And I don't think all of them survive. The difficulty here is it's not so isolated to the individual. This is an instance of public health, and the decisions that other people are making about what they're opting to not do are affecting the broader public, and putting others non-vaccinated at substantial risk. And I'm a person of facts and science, and that just doesn't seem to be the key to connecting with people who are just not tending to the science. They have other things in mind. I'm not sure how to appeal to them. I don't know that language.
Yeah. For me, there were like two components to the decision. The first would be my personal protection. How much is this, what risk am I taking for myself? And for me, I'm thinking, all right, if I get it, I got about a 1% on the order of risk of mortality. And then I compare that to what I expect to be about a 1/millionth difference in my life from the actual vaccine. Now, I could be wrong by orders of magnitude, and it's an obvious yes.
Well, what we're talking about with the vaccine or any treatment at all, it's not a sure guarantee that everything's going to work and it'll be perfectly. If you look at the informed consent for a tonsillectomy, you'll see the word death in there. And I'm sure somewhere down the road, somebody has died from a tonsillectomy. And it's a matter of choices and risk. And it's benefit versus risk. And it's always weighing things, risk versus benefit, what's going to be the thing to do. And if people are looking for a perfect guarantee that you will have no reaction and nothing bad will ever happen to you from this, it's just not there. Even if you go diving deep into statistical science, you never get a perfect solution. You get a solution that's just like the answer.
Diving deep is one of my favorite examples. Scuba diving is 5 micromorts, 5 million. 1/millionth chances on your life. Per dive. Skydiving is 7. So gives you some ratio.
Right, and getting in your
car. 1.4.
Right, and getting in your car, crossing the street. There is no guarantee anyone can tell you that you're going to make it to the other side of the street.
Yeah.
You could drop dead of a hemorrhage. I mean, or a car from out of nowhere could come and get you. And so it's a matter of risk reduction. So we get in the car. We don't just get in the car. We lock the door. We put on the seatbelt. We have airbags because we just don't know what's going to happen. So are you going to get in unarmed and unprotected, or are you going to take some measures to reduce the chance of harm? And again, it's no guarantee that everything's going to be perfect and you're going to walk out of that car in good shape, but you've got a better chance. And those are the kinds of number games that we play in healthcare and in the risk of regular life. And if somebody's waiting for an ironclad guarantee, I will have no reaction to this drug. It'll do everything, and it'll protect me 100%. It's like those numbers they're not there for aspirin.
Yeah, I never expect certainty in these things. There is no zero risk. I'm taking
and in terms of
taking a risk no matter what.
And in terms of medical and behavioral science research, when you fill out the paperwork to submit for approval and review from an institutional review board to look if it's ethical, it makes sense. There's high risk studies, there's moderate risk studies, there's low risk studies. There is no such thing as a no risk study.
Mm-hmm.
You ask someone one question, they may have an adverse reaction to it. We can't be certain, but we can take a lot of precautions to do what we can to make things as safe and humane and gentle as possible.
So there are two components.
Okay.
That first one, it's my first of order of approximation says it's a 10,000 to 1 risk. So it's like, absolutely, of course.
Okay.
But there's a motivator that was 100 times bigger. It's not about 100 times better odds. It's the public health question. I think that being part of a society, there is some level of risk that I need to be willing to take on for the common defense, whether this is a being attacked, there's a natural disaster, maybe there's somebody in the water that needs rescuing.
Right.
That I think that there's some small amount of risk that every one of us have our duty to take in defense of the public risk.
Right. Well, there is a social contract. We're not just indifferent to each other. We hold the door open for strangers. We take our package off the seat so somebody else can sit on the bus next to us. And it's those social courtesies that make our communities work, that make it in workplaces. And there's a lot of also internal motivation is if you're nice, you want to see a smile at someone, you'll get a smile. And of course, the opposite happens. If you draw a knife, there's a chance that someone else will draw a gun. So it's a lot about what kind of day do you want to have?
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to put into the world? And everybody's got their own particular human nature. Some people keep more to themselves. Some are a little more extroverted. Some are looking for opportunities to do kindnesses. Others just want to be left alone and are having a tough time. But overall, at some point, we care about the community. We care about each other. We want to be treated well. And we're, I think, brought up to know that if you want to be treated well, just be nice to people. And this being a community effort, this isn't about one person or one race or one gender getting sick. This is an all play. Everyone's vulnerable. Unless you don't believe in this, then it's time for a surprise.
Yeah.
But that's the nature of a public health problem. Is it needs to be a cooperative effort. And while it's hard to see an individual who makes a harsh decision that brings them an unfortunate outcome, it's really hard when individuals are making decisions and it's having a harsh effect at a community level. It's not just one person failing, it's contamination across vulnerable populations. That's hard to see.
Regarding your confidence in medicine, kind of on the scale of I'm really afraid to I'm really confident, maybe. I think I'm pegging you at very high confidence.
Pretty much. I mean, I like the notion that when I go to get medical care, I mean, I'm a PhD, I'm not a physician. When I go to get medical care, I like knowing that somebody has dedicated an enormous chunk of their life to science that I'm not confident about.
Right.
In the same way that when I take my car in for service and they say it needs this at 60,000 miles, I say, you know what, do it. I believe in the preventative maintenance because I want the car to last. And same thing, as I don't have a lot of trouble turning my confidence over to a competent healthcare professional to tell me what's going on in my body and what needs to be adjusted, or can you fix this?
So in the how mobile is your needle, I'd like to ask a hypothetical. What could you observe in a healthcare professional that would lower your confidence in that particular person?
That would lower my confidence?
Yes. In that particular example, are there red flags of behavior that you could make you not trust that practitioner?
There's attributes that I don't like, but it didn't make me not trust. I'm just remembering one doctor that I had when I was a member of a different group that I didn't like, but it didn't make me trust him less. He was just officious and cold, and I just made up my mind, I want to see this guy again, but I'm not questioning the medical decisions he's making.
Okay.
He just has a harsh personality, but
so
I haven't run into that.
Sort of pulled away from that person for social reasons, but not for trust reasons.
Right. It's just there's
Okay.
people with more compatible personalities that I just feel I could be more comfortable with.
Hmm.
But was I questioning his medical determinations and ultimately the prescription he wrote? No, it was right on target. It worked.
Nice. Okay.
I said, like him.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a good reason to get a different practitioner.
Absolutely. You
Yeah.
should be with somebody you feel comfortable
Yeah,
with.
indeed.
But no, it didn't break my trust.
Okay. So let me take another tack. This is again in the hypothetical, what would it take for you to lose trust kind of zone.
Okay.
Um, let's not talk about COVID specifically, because I don't want to cast any aspersions on the existing vaccines at all.
Okay.
So in a few years, we have another pandemic,
Okay.
something novel. And then there's a vaccine that's due to come out soon, due to be available within a month or two. What information would you want to have to opt in? And what kind of information could you get that would have you opt out?
Well, I'd be looking at the trial data, the
Mhm.
specificity, the sensitivity.
Could you explain that? Because people aren't going to know what
Sure.
specificity and sensitivity. I know because he taught me.
Okay.
By the way, we've known each other for a long time, and he taught me most of what I know about statistics.
Okay, so yeah, 25 years. Good fun. Specificity is does the drug do what it is designed to do? So if this drug was supposed to make your fever go away, does it make your fever go away without doing other surprising things?
Okay.
So there's specificity. Sensitivity is can we check for that phenomenon specifically?
Okay.
Without stretching into other domains. So is the test sensitive enough to check for what it was supposed to do? Is it specific enough that it's doing only what it's supposed to do?
Okay.
And then I would want to look at who was the data trialed on.
Okay.
Was there a diversity in the sample?
Okay.
And then I would
If it was all 20 to 25-year-old college males,
yeah,
it
and
might be not
typically
great.
a trial wouldn't be that narrow. You'd want diversity, so you could
they
do.
would understand.
Yeah, you could do
We
multiple.
need age. We need different levels of health.
Exactly.
All sorts of things.
And then I'd want to see how is it performing? Are these people getting sick from the drug? Are they getting sick from the disease we're supposed to prevent? And I'm seeing that people who are taking the drug aren't having adverse reactions to the drug, and they appear to be, for pretty much disease resistant, that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing without doing harm. You have my attention. By then, I'd like to get in line.
Okay. Cool. What are the best reasons you can think of when somebody's had medical fear, when they're on the opposite end, they're really resistant?
Yeah.
Like me, like me, especially prior to a few months ago. What do you think are the most valid reasons for their fear?
Oh, probably experience, or it could be, maybe they had a bad encounter with a healthcare professional, or maybe they had a bad outcome. And maybe, medicine can't fix everything. And so maybe they've lost confidence that they had some condition that nobody could fix.
Yeah.
And so that might make them pretty hesitant. The other possibility is no experience. And that's the source of a lot of anxiety. If you're unclear what's going to happen because you've never done this before, then anxiety, which is an anticipated fear, an anticipated loss, that's the definition of anxiety. I think something bad is going to happen to me down the road. Like if you've never had a flu shot, you might be thinking it hurts like hell and my arm is going to be inoperative for weeks and there's going to be blood and screaming. And if that's your expectation, whether you've never done it, that can be enough to stop you. Those can start to become reasons for hesitation, is your imagined anticipation. And the damnedest thing about imagined anticipation that's uninformed by any experience is the imagination can count to infinity. You can imagine falling off a 1,000,000-story building. Well, a 1,000,000-story building can't be built. But you can still be afraid of it, and your imagination can take you in big directions if you're not into the facts or the science. And so I think those could be a couple of sources for hesitations.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I'm just thinking about it. Jeff Bezos only went up to about a 10,000 story building. But a million stories, my goodness, that's a long way out.
That's a big building.
That's a big building. I think that's 1% of the way to the moon.
No, a long elevator ride.
Oh man, wow, yes. The opposite. If a person is hesitant, what are the best reasons for them to gain confidence?
Well, gaining confidence would give them access to the science that they need. And I work with patients all the time that were resistant or scared. I remember one patient, she was in ICU. She needed a neurosurgery. She never had an operation in her whole life. And of course, up to the last minute, she could refuse treatment and go home and not last too much longer. And the procedure, I spoke with the surgeon and her neurologist, and they told me it's an easy procedure that's got a good outcome, good numbers, good likelihood of functional survival, but not if she backs out. And so I talked to her about her hesitancy. What is it you're afraid will happen? So we addressed the anxiety and processed that and really talked to her about, this is what you're expecting would happen. And I respect that, and I want that story told. But are you open to listening to what actually will likely happen? And can we put those two on the table, what your expectation, your fear is, and what is likely to happen in reality, and see if we can bring those two to converse with each other and see which one of those is going to win the arm wrestle. And I mean, that's just an abbreviated form of it, but it was basically, tell me everything. Let's get it all out. Tell me what you're afraid of. And we'll talk about these one by one and see if this play at what you're afraid of. Can some information and some support help chip away at what's turning this into no? And it worked.
I had a hell of a time in hospital.
Yeah. And by the way, this patient, it worked. And it worked often.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it worked often.
Glad to hear that.
Anxiety itself is about an anticipated hurt. And people have all kinds of imagination about the terrible thing that would happen. I've seen patients, children, adults alike, after they get their flu shot, they laugh because they were anticipating it was going to hurt this much, and it only hurt that much. And they're like, that's it, I'm done. And their reaction is they laugh. It's a relief.
Have I laughed after a shot of insulin of late? No. Yeah. I'm not finding that funny yet, but I'll tell you, she's getting this.
Okay, but chances are you weren't overestimating how bad it would be. And
not after the 30.
No, it's just you become acclimated, and it's not a big deal.
I had such a hard time being able to give consent in the hospital, even for basic things like drawing blood. Early on, I asked 3 minutes. My wife Kelly and my son Rick, who's a paramedic accountant, to make a consent support or a consent decision team, so that I could remove myself from the judgment seat and say, if you three understand, and I'm okay with your reasons, I will adopt your conclusion even if I'm freaking the fuck out. And that worked.
So you put
trust down.
Okay, so you put together your own more objective.
Yeah. And there was one point in there where we spent something like 2 hours reading through studies and doing calculations and trying to, unfortunately, with an end of like 192 patients. So that was not great. But it was regarding getting this pick put in. And we figured out the actual risks of outpatient, if I extrapolate from that small, 8,000 patient day study, and was able to compare that to the risks of the alternatives,
Mm-hmm.
and come to a clear mathematical answer. At which point my own freak out settled, because weirdly I'm so mathematical. When I get mathematical confidence on the odds of a thing, and make the comparison, it's so much better than all of the words that you can wrap around that don't make math.
Right. Well, the other thing is incidental evidence. For instance, looking at the report showing that the communities with the lowest vaccine levels are the ones with the highest hospitalizations.
Sure.
And you don't need a lot of correlation calculations to kind of see that there's a pattern here.
I keep hearing stats from 99.1 to 99.7% of the deaths from COVID are happening amongst the unvaccinated. You need more?
But
that covers it.
Right. If all you're subscribing to is the facts, but that leaves the feelings out of the picture.
Right.
And if people have strong feelings, there may not be enough facts.
Right.
To address those feelings.
Right.
And
I want to understand how to, because I know for myself how I manipulate me, but I know that I'm probably not neurotypical. I'm probably a Bellender. So what works for me, I don't expect to work for other people. Tell me best how you would approach the common person, or maybe the person who's resistant to facts.
As a scientist, my chief communication skill is cultivation and communication of facts.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody has said, okay, you can talk to me, but you can't use facts, it's going to be a very short conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't have a loud or booming voice or a big persuasive bundle of other things to say. And I'm kind of at a loss. I don't know what the right communication is for somebody who's subscribing to facts.
Right.
And granted, there are a lot of other ways to conceive the world and determine what your perception of truth in the world is. Epistemology, which is an entire science of how do we know what we know? What is the basis for knowing things? It's more than just empiricism.
Oh, yeah.
There's everything from intuition on up. And there's spiritual belief system. There's apparently political belief systems have spawned. And if someone subscribed to that, it's almost as if oppositional facts are just seen as, no, you're on the wrong line of you're on the wrong track.
You can be rejected.
That's not where the truth really lies. And with that, it's like, well, that's all I have.
At that point, I'm stuck to street epistemology, where I can just, without giving any direct message, without giving any of my own facts, I'm limited to, I can ask you for your reasons. I can ask you how you might process data if it came in. I might be able to ask you the shape of what sort of thing would change your mind. And then sometimes people will go, okay, I said that if there was a study of at least 10,000 and it was this and that was that, and then they might actually go find that on their own. That can help. It's not a great percentage shot.
I found I just don't have much persuasive power when people have subscribed to something other than facts. If it's feelings, we could talk about the feelings and vent them out and ask them, propose that there may be another way that could come out, and how would you feel if this was a possible outcome? Would you consider a different outcome? Usually people are amenable to that. There's some flexibility, but then they depart from empirical science and they subscribe to a different line that's just not dependent on facts and figures. Then they're speaking another language. I don't have any leverage, and I don't have something bigger than that. For instance, if somebody subscribes to religion, I'm going home with septicemia, God will take care of me.
Oh my.
And it happens sometimes, and it's really sad. And I know if you don't get your IV antibiotics promptly,
septicemia is what I almost died from recently.
It's bad news. You don't want to have a massive blood infection.
A massive blood infection, which I did when I finally got to the hospital, and they saved my freaking life.
Well, it's hard to see when somebody is turning away from the science and they opt for something else. I can't come in with something that's bigger than their spiritual belief system that they've subscribed to for a lifetime, that they ascribe. It solved everything else important in my life, and so they turn over to that. And like, well, there's other people who went to medical school, and there's pharmaceuticals that really have been shown to be the only real answer to this. And I would have a thorough conversation with them, and then sadly note in their chart, unproductive conversation, patient opted to leave against medical advice. And I would put in the details of what we talked about. And the interesting thing is, I found
the measure of productivity would be whether they stayed in.
Well, I would think the measure of success is if they had consented to taking the meds.
Right. Okay.
That was kind of
that was the point.
The goal. Because that's really the only thing that's been shown to resolve these specific cases, either a surgery or what, but it's hard to see all that going off, and but people make their decisions, and some minds I've been able to change, and others, the curious thing is the ones that refuse, they'll follow the line of logic all the way through. Is this place not the creation of a deity that skilled people come together and benevolently help each other? Yes. Isn't
is the medicine, you're saying, is the hospital a place that the deity intended?
Sure.
Okay.
And I'll talk to them along those lines. It is not the medication that was developed meticulously and tested.
Sure.
Is that not an effort for humanity to help humanity? And is that not part of how spirituality is meant to work? And and I'll follow it all the way through, speaking to them in their language. And they're yes, 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 all along the way. And I said, okay, so can the nurse put in the IV now? Oh, no, I don't need that. And it's like, oh, well, they pull the rug out at the end. And it's hard to see, because they're not bad people. They're just making a bad decision. In my opinion, it's a harsh decision that's not going to lead to their best quality of life or length of life. And it's hard to see. But in terms of the pandemic, one person's individual decision is affecting the health of others who are equally vulnerable. And that's just, it's hard to see.
It is. That's very tough, that part.
And
because I think the word of science, exponential.
Yeah, and
I think if it were just the personal thing, again, it's like 100 people would have to change the vaccines to save a life. But given the herd immunity, the exponential component, I think the answer might be between 10 and 30.
Well, it's hard to see somebody
for life save.
Right. It's hard to see one person make a decision that's going to adversely affect them.
Yeah.
It's another thing when that person's one decision is going to have echoing negative reactions to others who sadly are like-minded, and it's just hard to see all that. And I wish I knew a way to interrupt that, but bigger minds than mine are trying to find ways to intervene with that. And I don't know what it's going to take.
I don't know what it's going to take either. I really don't. I'm really hoping to direct this series, if you will, to the section of population that are resistant to vaccines, but are open to talking about it, are open to exploring it. I'm hoping that in these interviews, I can bring you the human side of all of these different positions. I'm not selecting based on medical hesitancy. I want everybody on every part of the scale. I want everybody from wild fear to wild confidence and everything in between. And I want to understand the human reasons why it is. And I don't want to get into arm wrestling over politics about it. And I'm hoping that people that can make a good decision toward their lives make a better choice. Yes, I'm being biased. I think vaccines are a better choice. I'm not pretending to even be neutral on that. Um, we'll find a human way to get through their fears, a human way to find the confidence that they might need to override. I know, I mean, for myself, it required I had to convince myself that I was taking an inordinate risk if I didn't do it. And that's what it took to push me over the edge to be willing to take needles, because holy shit. If I talk about needles, I'm going to fuck up. I'm just going to.
Oh, there's no shortage of needle phobia. When I was doing HIV care, I discovered that there was a company that we were working with that provided a wonderful oral test that you rub this device across the gums and it runs an ELISA test, the enzyme linked immunosorbent assay, which is the first line of
that part.
which is the first line HIV test.
Okay, yeah.
And the great thing there is I did a little bit of research and found that one of the most common phobias is needle blood phobia.
Okay.
And it doesn't end at childhood. About 10% of adults are needle phobic.
Okay.
They just don't want a needle. And the trouble there is they are at higher risk of health problems,
sure,
because they stay away from doctors, nurses, healthcare. So this may be a piece of the picture too that we're not seeing. Is maybe it's easier to cite some obscure or some big overt
terminating cliche off and whatever
voice in the news instead of saying, "I'm just scared to death of a needle." You know, that makes you sound weak instead of saying, "I'm not doing this because of." So there may be, you know, estimated 10% of people who are opting to not be vaccinated. They just may be terrified of a needle. And there are ways of desensitizing, and there are graceful ways of doing inoculations. And
I'll tell you, it's almost an advantage that I'm also like diabetic, or should have been like treated as a diabetic. I was a pre-diabetic state, and so now I'm daily poking, lancing the fingers, and daily getting. Kimberly's getting really good at shooting me in the butt.
So you're getting desensitized.
I'm getting desensitized to it a little bit at a time. I'll get little lancets on my fingers. They are a lot less scary than I did get one of these in the side there. That the needle was this long, and I had to help them guide it with CT, and it was an hour long, and it was a thing, and I felt like a champ.
Well, that's quite an accomplishment. No, but needle phobia may be an unspoken piece of the picture, because I think adults might be a little embarrassed that, you know, they're scared of a needle.
Aside from like convincing me that if I don't do it, I'm going to die, is there a way that you could address someone like myself who's needle phobic and desensitize me a little bit? What would be done if I wanted to desensitize from needle phobia a bit?
Oh. Well, I would have you first start talking about how bad do you think it'll be.
Okay.
And it would probably be an overestimation.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, and then we could talk about the difference between what actually happens. I'd
probably talk to you about 8 or 10 times in which I was damaged by things like IVs put in wrong and left in badly. And
but
I've had a bunch of that kind of crap.
Okay, but a flu shot isn't aiming to do a vein puncture.
Flu shots, I'm not that scared of those.
Right. But once the fear is there, it can easily become generalized that I don't want any needles.
Right. Okay. I'll tell you, an IV needle is 100 times bigger than a little fine thing that's going to go in the fat for me.
Exactly. And it's the difference between a vein puncture and an intramuscular.
Yes.
It's entirely different. So if it's about needle phobia, I would begin standard desensitization approach is ask you, what do you think is going to happen? What's your expectation here? And then we would compare what you think is going to happen to what's likely to happen and try to shorten that road and get you closer to what is actually going to happen. And we'll see where that goes. So there's that. And then there are I have had inoculations that are just like, when are you going to do it? And they're already putting on the bandage. And so I'm not denying that people may have had a brutal injection at some point, but a skilled healthcare professional can do it gracefully.
Oh man, the difference between the good ones and the bad ones are holy crap.
And I'm not denying that somebody might have been traumatized.
Oh yeah,
and
I got traumatized once where they were trying to grab for an arterial gas.
That's not a pretty picture.
And it went very, very badly, and I crashed. I crashed hard. That was really bad.
Yeah, that can be tough. So
the third one was the one that went wrong. The first two were just horrible.
I'm sorry you had that experience.
Thank you.
But it's those harsh experiences that build up and create a fear of even a smaller encounter. Yep. And if we can take that and say, this isn't arterial blood gas, this isn't a vein puncture, it's a very different kind of procedure. And so that's all manageable, and that's all good talking point.
Good.
I mean, that can be taken down if the person is motivated to have those conversations. I mean, like in anything in psychotherapy or any approach.
If that person, I'm pointing, you know who you are, wanted to gain some desensitization without necessarily being obligated to something after, who would they talk to in their life? Would they talk to their primary care physician? Would they talk to a counselor?
I talk to a counselor. Talk to anybody who's skilled in inoculations.
Okay.
And they'll be able to tell you the amount of trauma to actually expect. Okay. In contrast that to what you think you'll expect. And then afterwards, I would ask the post-event question. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad were you anticipating that to be? Okay. And then maybe that could be the pre-test question. This is going to be a 10. And then you do it and say, so what did it turn out to be? And they probably give you a different number other than 10.
Yeah.
And say, well, you need to keep that in mind for next time. And these things get easier. And if you're afraid that it's going to be extra hurtful, tell whoever is going to be administering the shot that you're not excited about this, and can you do this as gently as possible? And hopefully they'll make it as humane and gentle as they can.
Yeah.
Like anything in life, tell people what you need.
By the way, 3 cheers for Harvard UCLA staff. 95% of the time I was like, wow, you guys rock. And I'm going to ignore the other 5%.
Okay.
I can complain, but whatever.
Well, 95 still an A.
95 still an A. Yes.
That's
there you
something.
go. There you go. Yeah. Thank you very much, Hersch. Do you have any questions for me? Do you have any further things that you'd like to say?
I think this is a productive effort, and I hope we're able to help some people. I just want people to be well and healthy and
thank you.
Have a good long life.
Let's see. I'm going to see if... Nope, I'm not seeing what I'm looking for the outros. I'll figure that was out later. Okay, so let me just talk this one out. Thank you all for coming and listening to our conversation on medical hesitancy. This is going to be part of a series that is not going to be scheduled at any particular time of day. I'm going to be going on when my interlocutor is ready, and probably having the interviews in their location whenever practical, and sharing food, and it's going to be all friendly like this, and there's going to be people from all over the spectrum. Thank you, Street Epistemology International, for helping to fund all this and paying for microphones and headphones, and lights, and wonderful things that make all this possible. If you look on my YouTube channel, you'll see a nice list of promoted channels that other people doing street epistemology as well that you might really like to speak to. Thank you especially to the production team, local and remote. Great job. I didn't see any errors today, so maybe we need to sloppy it up a little bit and be more innovative. I don't know, whatever it is. Thank you all for coming, and see you next time.